Quick Slants.
What's up, everybody? We got a very special episode of Quick Slants today. Yeah, it's draft season. You know that, and I know that, and the Patriots, I'm presuming, know that as well. But we also have a celebration to get into. So let me tell you what's coming up on this program, because here's the game plan, ladies and gentlemen. Stacking the needs of the Patriots as the 2022 annual selection program begins. The swap meet that could take place in the first round of the NFL draft. Let's get Metchi, huh? Phil's going to be in to talk about that, and then we will have a little celebration towards the end of the program. But before all of that, how about my slant, huh? Achoo! You like shopping for socks and underwear? No. You want to buy a nice party shirt. But the smart and necessary thing is replacing your ratty ass under things first. A wide receiver is a party shirt, okay? The Patriots can't have one. They need underwear, they need socks. And when they wire in their first round pick in 16 days, it has to be practical and it has to hit. Because the New England Patriots, ladies and gentlemen, are paying for past late April mistakes and general miscalculations. They need an offensive tackle because the two they have are too often unavailable. And Isaiah Wynn, a 2018 first rounder, has an expiring contract and a recent history of inconsistency. They need a guard because they traded away one of the league's very best in Shaq Mason. Still no good reason why. They need a corner because they didn't want to pay Steph Gilmore or J.C. Jackson. Understandable. But they also swung and missed on Joanne Williams in the second round in 2019. They need an impact second-level player because they were too slow at the end of last season, and we're still looking for signs of life from second and third round picks like Josh Uche, Anthony Jennings, Ronnie Perkins, guys like Chase Winovich. They've already been shipped out of town. They need a wideout, yeah, because Nikhil, but they kind of addressed that already with Devontae Parker. And besides, they can actually take the field with a straight face in September with Devontae Parker and Aguilar and Myers and Bourne. The dig out from wasted picks like Dalton Keene and Devin Asiasi in the third round has begun. The last two drafts kind of looked okay, but the potholes on the Patriots roster didn't develop all at once, and the process of patching them won't be fixed all at once. It has to continue in earnest. Mego, what's up, my kid?
What's going on, Tom? I love this analogy. I hate shopping for jeans personally. But I am going to disagree on one point about this little clothes shopping trip you're going on. I'm not sure that a wide receiver or an elite wide receiver is so much a party shirt as a sport coat. It's not something that you necessarily need for day-to-day life, but eventually if you don't have it, you're going to get discluded from certain events and clubs. A country club is not going to let you in your under things,
no, you're not.
Tom. And eventually you're not going to be able to go toe-to-toe with Josh Allen if you don't get your own Stephon Diggs.
You're right. I mean, to enter, yeah, you can't walk into these places discluded. You use the word discluded, and she's very, very, very smart. So there's words that I've never heard before that I am wary of calling her on that are probably real words, but I've never heard the word discluded.
Excluded?
Yeah, I think it's excluded.
We can go with excluded.
But I'm going to Google discluded before we're done here because I'm pretty sure you're right. But you're exactly right. But again, that's a garnish. And the Patriots right now are in the process of getting their meat and potatoes on the plate.
I hear you, and I love how much you're switching analogies, but what if there's a sport coat out there that's designer, on sale, and you're gonna wear it for the prime events, for your child's wedding, for the decade to come, and it's called Jamison Williams, and it's sitting there in the first round. Do you really say, no, thank you?
That's a tangle that the Patriots might have to encounter, because here's the interesting thing, and this is why when we have Phil Perry in, we're gonna discuss this at great length, how deep this draft is. Not really at the top in the first 10 picks, but from like 20 to 50, 20 to 60, it is stacked. So there's plenty of shopping to do, and that's why Robert Kraft turning up the heat on Bill Belichick to make sure that the Patriots have another good draft that Robert Kraft really thinks he spurred the Patriots along to last year, that it happens again in 2022.
Let's go to From the Stands, because Tom, you put out a poll.
Yeah, let's disclude this discussion.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to disclude it. It's very obvious with their first pick, the Patriots have to select. Look at this. I thought people would be wide receiver oriented. I thought they would be over the moon for wideouts. They're not. They're smart. They want a stupid fast not a stupid comment. They want a stupid, fast, big brain linebacker. 40%.
Disclude that.
Quarterback, 29%. Offensive lineman, more meat, more potatoes, 19%. And you can wait on your wideout. I love it. What do you got for comments, Mego?
Well, Karen says, align or trade down. Bill Belichick not messing around with another first-round pick.
Good job, Kay.
And David said, it's not obvious. They just need to pick the best player available at the position groups mentioned.
Really, it's not that complicated. Go.
And Random Pats fan said, happy to see wide receiver in last so far. Better chance at a stud second or third round wide receiver than other positions. Plus, I rank the Pats position needs as CB, LB, OT, OG, WR, DL, edge.
Everybody needs an OG.
That's a whole alphabet of needs.
Everybody needs an OG. And to me, it's so fascinating to see how many needs the Patriots have, despite the fact that they spent so frivolous is not the word I'm looking for, that they just went bananas last year in free agency, but these holes still exist. And again, I don't get the concept of moving on from Shaq Mason. Yeah, you're trying to save some cap space, but extracting good players and leaving nothing in their wake, to me, it's mind-numbing.
Does it make you think, and this may be going out on a ledge a little bit, that there was something that they were moving towards in free agency that they were not able to lock down or eventually fell through, and that's why they made that big move on where in an area where they remain having needs? Well,
we're going to have an opportunity to speak to Matt Groh, Patriots Director of Player Personnel, on Friday, and I'm sure that he will divulge all the intel that we need on why the Patriots have moved on from Shaq Mason. No, he won't. Okay, Jabril Peppers, newly added Patriots defender, he spoke with the media today, and here's a little snippet of what the former Michigan standout had to say.
What do you think about him moving to the offensive side of the ball? Is it a surprise to you?
A little bit, but back in New York, he always leaned toward the Giants and kind of toward the offense and favored them a little bit more. So it's not too much of a surprise to me, but it'll be interesting to see what he does on the offensive side, because usually I know him as the head guy and the special teams guru. So it'll be interesting to see him on that side and talk a little smack to him.
Jabril Peppers, a good ad for the Patriots coming off injury. Will be able to fill some roles on special teams, punt returner, but also as a defender in the box as a safety. But interesting to hear him talk about Joe Judge. At least he did do some stuff with the Giants, but again, not over the moon for his offensive acumen.
Well, I believe he ended 10 and 23 over 2 seasons, something around there, right? And it's interesting because aside from that clip, he said that he was excited to have a reunion with him, which makes me think of kind of how Judge went out on that epic 11-minute rant after a loss to the Bears, saying that so many players were clamoring to come back and play for him. So maybe there's a kernel of truth to that?
I mean, I know Joe. I got to know Joe while he was coaching here. I like Joe Judge. But again, if you're covering the team, you have to base things on resume. And the resume for Joe Judge when he was with the New York Giants is not one that recommends him as a gifted offensive coach. Perhaps we'll be proven wrong. Back at you. Quick slants. We call it the B block. And right now, we're going to talk more draft. These are the teams with multiple first-round picks this year. I don't know if it's a record. Should have Googled that, but I didn't. But look at them all. Look at them all. What does that tell you? It tells you a lot of teams have artillery to take plenty of players at the top, or if they so desire, scoot on out of the first round and deal down. To discuss this is the Senator Phil Perry. Phil, how you doing, my guy?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Tom.
Don't you find that interesting? All those doubled up picks? It might make for a chaotic Thursday night.
Yeah, it could, but I also look at this quarterback class, and I wonder how many of those teams are hot and heavy for one of those players, because it, plain and simple, is not a strong draft class at the most important position in the sport, Tom. Usually, those are the guys that you wheel and deal for. You don't end up trading a bunch of capital to move up and take even an offensive tackle, which we know is hugely important, but it's not a quarterback. And so I wonder if there are a couple of those teams that love these quarterbacks more than most of the rest of the world does, because right now it doesn't look like a great class.
It's funny, too, because it's almost an embarrassment of riches. I'm sure there's a lot of teams that are sitting there saying, wow, I wish I had 2 picks in a draft that was so heavy at the top where we could really spend this and go up into that top 10 and do some business. But now I'm stuck with 2 picks in a first round where I can get a player of the same ilk at 40. Is that a good read on that?
I think it is a pretty good read on that. I would also look at it, though, and say you're really only moving way up the way you're talking about for the guy that throws the football. That's generally how this thing works. Like, there are only a
So there's not a
of,
game-changing Micah Parsons, not even that you have to really move up that far for a Micah Parsons season.
I think there are some of those guys, but in general, you just don't trade that kind of capital to go and get those guys. It's just not how it's typically worked. Now, maybe there's a team or two in there that feels like they're a piece away, and as long as they get that piece, now they're all of a sudden in the championship mix. But you're usually not a non-quarterback away. It's the quarterbacks that you make the
So bear that
jumps.
in mind, because there are not many on the block this year. I've heard people refer to it this way. I like this. There's two drafts. There's the main draft, and then there's the quarterback draft, and seeing how that impacts things. What will also be interesting is to see how those draft picks might impact Baker Mayfield, Jimmy Garoppolo,
Right.
guys who could still be untethered on draft day. How would the Patriots maybe figure into that boatload of picks? Could they find an opportunity to move up? And what position would you see if, again, it's early, or would they want to do what they so often do and move back?
To me, that's the smart way to go, especially in this year's draft, because the talent, as you already referenced, the talent in terms of picks, call it 12, all the way down to 40, maybe 45, is pretty similar. It's pretty homogenous. And so if you are at 21 and you want to add some picks because you have all the needs that you guys referenced in the first segment of the show, and you just want to add more picks and you want to have more darts in your hot little hand that you could throw at the board and hope that you hit a couple bullseyes, this draft is the draft where that strategy, I think, would really pay off.
All right, speaking of hot little hands, here's a guy from Alabama who's got hot little hands, and his name is John Metchi. Terrific and electric wide receiver. See what his numbers were the last 2 years. Coming off an injury, Phil, he was in Foxborough this week to have his knee rechecked because he is coming off that injury, as we alluded to. First off, who does Metchi remind you of? Let's talk Jalen Waddle as a comp. Anything like that, or what?
So you're going to have to dial the speed dial way back when you're talking about Jalen Waddle and John Metchi. Metchi does not have that kind of speed. He does not have that kind of explosiveness. But what he does have is versatility and toughness that is really off the charts. If you listen to Nick Saban talk about him, he calls him the epitome of what you want in a wide receiver. Smart, runs good routes. He is polished, Tom. So I think for all those reasons, he would fit in New England. He's also one of these guys that could play the X or the Z or the F in the slot if you wanted to use him there. He's probably, because of the way he plays, because he's not that dynamic down the field boundary type of receiver, he's probably more of an interior guy than he is an outside the numbers explosive play threat. But he could do a little bit of everything for you. You know Bill Belichick would love that.
He's got a little Branchian skill, maybe even a little Edelmanian skill.
I don't know if he's quite as those guys were elite in terms of their suddenness and their quickness and their explosiveness in short areas. He gives you, I would say, B grades across the board when it comes to the physical stuff. It's the intangible stuff where it sounds like he is really off the charts. He also, Tom, he has this chemistry with Mac Jones already established, and we've seen this around the league with some really high-end talents. Whether you're talking about the two guys in Cincinnati, down in Philadelphia, they're doing the same thing. They're matching these college quarterbacks with their teammates at the receiver position, and it's worked out in those spots.
Yeah, and we saw it last year with Waddle, another Alabama guy with Tua.
Yep.
This brings us to the obvious question. John Metchi is an absolute layup for the Patriots, if not in the first round, then the second round, with that injury if he does happen to drop. That being the case, we've seen the Patriots have so many players that look like absolute layups, sure things, whether it's Hunter Renfrow, whether it's Sterling Shepard, whether it's Deebo Samuel. Phil, you could fill in the blanks with a few more, a tight end, George Kittle, if you want to go back that far. But so often Bill has passed on those, and we say, well, I guess he knows what he's doing. And then later on we go, did he really know what he was doing with N'Keal Harry over Deebo Samuel, for instance? Do you look at this as an absolute simple 1 + 1 = 2 John Metchi in Foxborough?
It feels that way because of all of the things that we already talked about that he brings to the table, but also the fact that he is coming off an injury, Tom, makes him a pretty good value. You could get him. You mentioned the second round. You might even be able to get him in the third round. He might be docked because of that injury, because you're not exactly sure what you're going to be getting. And so that skill set with that kind of recommendation from Nick Saban at a discounted price, that sounds like a Patriot.
When we talk, and I wanted to ask you about big school, small school, Lenore Ryan versus Georgia and Alabama, but
I love that.
I'm going to lay off that because I know your prototypical Patriots, which folks have got to read on NBCSportsBoston.com because it goes chapter and verse on each position, and the guys who would fit well here. Guard, tackle, corner, wideout, linebacker. There is 1, 2, 3, or 4 of each who fits the suit? Unless you're just putting a buff and shine on these guys.
No.
Whipped cream on a turd, no?
No, there's really good athletes across the board. I would say in this draft in particular, if we're talking about the first round, you're talking about pick number 21 overall, it's a deep tackle draft. You have a chance of getting a really good quality tackle at 21, who in other years, Tom, might be gone by pick 12 or 15. I would say corner is a pretty strong class as well. There's going to be talent into really the first half of the second round there, where I think you'd feel confident in playing one of those guys right away. So some really premium positions, Tom, that cost a lot of money if you're paying veterans to play that spot that you could get at a discounted price, obviously, on those rookie contracts.
It's a really good reason we have Phil as a good friend and a colleague and on the program, because he knows what he's talking about.
Oh, hey, thanks.
He knows what he's talking about.
Yeah, he's so sweet.
A woman for me is handling your own, but knowing how to cater to a man's needs, right? And I think a lot of times when you get that aesthetic of like, I'm a boss, bitch, like I'm a this, I'm a that, no, baby, like, but you can't cook.
Okay.
You don't know when to be quiet. You don't know how to allow a man to lead.
Oh, personally, I don't love that language. But we live in a country of 330 million people, and many of us have different expectations about how we want our personal relationships to look. What's very wrong to me about that is using a public platform to tell a group of people who have had to fight for equal rights that they should be subservient. On the other hand, I get it. I watched Cam quarterback 15 games in 2020, and you shouldn't let that guy cook.
That's why she has her own forum here, because every week it's hysterical. And yeah, I mean, no one in any relationship should feel as if they need to be servile to the other person in that relationship. But we're not going to browbeat somebody into changing the way they operate. So if Cam is a dinosaur, a little bit of a caveman, that's to a degree okay. Just don't act as if servility is the stock in trade that everybody should be embracing. Yes? As we tiptoe through landmines in these conversations, am I there?
Yes, absolutely. Look, it's a personal choice of how you want to deal with your interpersonal relationships. I just don't need someone to tell me.
I mean, if you want to cook, if the woman wants to cook, cook. If the man wants to cook, he should cook. But saying, where's my dinner, it's never going to go over big in my house or anybody else. All right, great stuff. What time is it now, Meg? I think
it's time to awkwardly pivot to Quickfire.
We are the kings of the awkward pivot.
Let's start off with the Good Morning Football crew held a draft of who they think would win the AFC next season. The Patriots went 12th in that draft with only 4 teams behind them. That is very rough, and that brings us to a sobering reality.
Do we see any lies there, though? I mean, maybe a little bit, but at this juncture, when we look at how the Patriots are currently constituted, offensively, defensively, their offensive line, their cornerback situation, their coaching situation, the Patriots really don't necessarily get the benefit of the doubt, especially with the way they closed the end of last season. They will, no doubt, surprise us, however.
To me, it signals that on the national scale, there is this wake-up call that, yes, the Patriots are fully in a rebuild. It's something that we realized a little while ago here in the local media, but I think that really signals that nationally, people are looking at this and going, you got a lot of problems, and your conference is really good.
Conference really good is a good point. Go ahead.
Let's move on to septuagenarian Bill, because Bill Belichick turned 70 on April 16th. Like me, he is a fellow Aries. We are very stubborn, but we are confident leaders.
Seems to be really adept. Are you stubborn?
Yes, I am incredibly stubborn. I am a pain in the ass.
Fine. Well, when we look at Belichick, there are times that he is stubborn and a pain in the ass, but he's also the most gifted, talented, and successful head coach in NFL history, if you ask me. And really, if you ask anybody, I don't care how many wins Don Shula has, he never performed in the free agent era. He never constructed a team the way Bill Belichick has and rebooted it. By this age, you saw Chuck Noll or Tom Landry or Don Shula shuffling off into their sunsets. Bill Belichick is fighting to make sure that the sun don't go down on him. Right?
Yeah, okay, so you are of the mind that we're going to have at least a few more years of Bill Belichick if the ball is in his court, correct?
I think it'll be a long autumn.
Okay.
How's that?
I like a nice.
A lot of Indian summer. There's going to be some Indian summer.
Let's go on to Bill Still Not Due. Speaking of another Bill, Parcells in the Hall of Fame. Make your case for in or out this year.
Here's the thing. If Bill Parcells was nominated, when he has been nominated, last week we did that, the Patriots Hall of Fame committee put up nominations and Parcells was one of the guys. Well, I actually put my votes in for weighted. Vince Wilfork first, Blake Friebel second, Wes Welker third. Logan Mankins, I hated to not have him in, but I didn't. And then Bill Parcells. To me, Bill Parcells, yes, he was foundationally brilliant, brought in 1 million players who had contributions into the dynasty, but he also spent from 1996-ish until 2001, 2002, actively pursuing the demise of the New England Patriots and undermining the team. So to me, I'm not going to pick it if he doesn't get in. I'm not going to pick it if he does.
The reality is when you put together 2 back-to-back dynasties, it becomes really difficult to include anyone into the Hall of Fame who's not part of those at this point in time.
Yeah. Can I take this one? Because it's time for your birthday, and Mego has turned 41, and this is her back in, what year would that be? 1984?
I believe that is
1984?
89.
And these are the things that we do on Quick Slants to celebrate our events. Look at you. What did you have? The entire cake?
I was a big baby.
She was a big baby. She's still a big baby.
I'm still a big baby. Okay,
She
we
got
have
a whoopie pie.
flames on one side, hot on the other. I'm gonna take a big old bite. Mm.
Sometimes we leave too much time at the end of the show and we have to watch you eat your whoopie pie. All right, everybody, we had a nice time. We got early edition. We got Celtics coverage coming up all the rest of the week. How is it?
It's delicious. Go Cavs!